What's going on, YouTube? Mr. Wheels here with another episode of Sportstalk. So if you haven't heard already, the NHL training camps are set to open up, and the topic tonight will be a preseason preview. Even though I know it's not technically the preseason yet, a preview of how I think the 7 Canadian teams are going to fare this season. And let's start off with a topic that I've done a lot about so far, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, a little bit of a recap for the Leafs so far. Starting in goal, they got Jonathan Bernier to back up James Reimer. This is a good thing. Bernier is going to help Reimer. He's going to push him. It's going to be a good thing. And I suggest people not read into all the controversy that the media is trying to make with this goaltending controversy, because there's more goaltending controversies, more serious ones with other teams around the league. Now, moving on to guys like their other additions like David Clarkson, David Bolin. Clarkson's a good fit. He's going to add toughness. He can score goals. We'll see how he fares not playing with a guy like Ilya Kovalchuk in New Jersey. The Leafs are a different team, but Clarkson's going to be a good fit, and it appears like he might be on the second line. David Bolin, mainly I think what he's going to provide is leadership, and he's got proven playoff experience. He scored the Stanley Cup winning goal this past season, so he's a good fit. It'll give them some depth at center, which is what they're in desperate need for. Now, moving on to the Leafs' strengths. As I just said, goaltending. The Leafs have two 25-year-old goaltenders now. Finally we're past goaltenders like Vesatoskula and J.S. Jaguar. You know, these guys, Bernier and Reimer and Bernier, however you want to look at that, they're going to be solid goaltenders, and it's a strength. People should rejoice that we have these two guys instead of making it a controversy. The second strength for the Leafs that I see is happen with probably the most important signing they had in the offseason. That was signing Tyler Bozak to another 5-year deal. That keeps Bozak, Kessel, and Lupul together on the top line. And they're going to have to score a lot of goals and be consistent for the Leafs to be successful. The third and final most important strength that I see for the Leafs is the amount of toughness they have on the team. With guys like Colton Orr, Fraser McLaren, the addition of David Clarkson and David Bolin, they're going to be one of the toughest teams in the league, and other teams will play them differently because of the amount of toughness the Leafs have on their team. Now, moving on to their weaknesses, I'm sorry if I offend anyone by saying this, but their defense is going to be one of their biggest liabilities. Whenever you have a guy like Dion Phaneuf, who had probably one of the biggest giveaways in Leaf history last season in the playoffs, you know, he's a liability. I see him as a skating pylon. I don't like him. He had one good statistical season in his rookie season, and he hasn't really done much since. And, you know, I really don't see how John Michael Liles fits into the equation anymore either. I find he's a little bit too small. And then, of course, you got guys like Cody Franzen, who is yet to sign a contract, but he's not the greatest skater either, and that's what I find the Leafs have with their defense. They're not the best skating defense, and the best teams in the league have good skating defensemen. Moving on, I see the Leafs having a lack of depth scoring, mainly in their bottom six, and that could be an issue. And as I just said, the lack of, or with the contracts of guys like Cody Franzen, the off-ice distractions. Now, I did a previous video on Nazem Kadri and Cody Franson. Nazem Kadri just signed a 2-year, $5.8 million deal for the next 2 years yesterday. And that should alleviate some of the concerns at center. And just a side note, the Leafs are giving a professional tryout to Mason Raymond. The Leafs were in need of another top 6 forward with the departure of Mikhail Grabovski, and Mason Raymond might not be the greatest fit, but it's a start. And overall, I think the Leafs are going to be, they should be able to be a playoff team. Probably they're going to end up somewhere between the 8th and final spot, anywhere to probably the 6th spot. So moving on, and this is going to be a long video, guys. I have a lot to get through, so just bear with me. The Montreal Canadiens. Let's start off. Carey Price didn't have a great season last year, or well, I mean that's the way it's being portrayed. It wasn't horrible, but he needs to do better if the Canadiens are going to be more successful this year. Now, their biggest offseason new additions are George Parros and Daniel Briere. And Parros brings some much-needed toughness and size to a very small Canadiens team. And I know everybody's making a big deal about Daniel Briere and how he didn't sign a couple years ago. You've got him now, so just be happy that he's there now. He's going to help your team. And what he lacks in size, he will make up for in veteran leadership. And they also added Douglas Murray, who is a veteran defenseman, very hard-hitting defenseman, and they're going to be without Alexei Emelin for a while, so Douglas Murray is going to need to step up. So the strengths for the Canadiens are definitely their goaltending. If Carey Price can be consistent throughout the season, then they're going to be in good shape. And the Canadiens have a good range of veteran forwards who are still young enough, kind of not out of their prime yet. Guys like Thomas Buchanan and Brian Gionta. Well, Gionta might be a little bit out of his prime, but they definitely have veteran experience, and mixed in with guys like Brendan Gallagher, Alex Galchenyuk, Lars Eller. I mean, they're going to be an exciting team to watch. And moving on to probably one of their biggest stories for the Canadiens last season, PK Subban. He has to prove that last year wasn't just a flash in the pan for him. I believe he has the ability to be a all-star defenseman or a superstar defenseman. So he's got to have a similar year to his career year last year. Now, moving on to their weaknesses, like I said, they're going to be without Alexei Emelin for a little while to start the season, and that seemed to be where they declined last year when Emelin got hurt with that big knee injury. That's where it all kind of fell apart for the Canadiens, and guys like Douglas Murray and David Drukowski and even a prospect like Jared Tenori are going to need to step up and fill that void. Now, despite adding a guy like George Parros, the Canadiens still are undersized compared to a lot of teams in the league, and I think they're still going to get pushed around by teams like Toronto, who have a lot of really tough grinder-like players on their team, and so that's going to be a problem for the Canadiens. But if Carey Price can stand on his head and they don't have issues scoring goals, then the Canadiens will probably finish ahead of Toronto, and I see them finishing around the 4th and 5th spot in the East, and that's the best case scenario. Moving on to the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Sens have lost Alfredsson, who was their captain and you could argue the face of their franchise. He's gone to Detroit. Now, I think this will be a distraction, as it has been for much of the offseason, for not only the team, but the fan base, because they're so broken up about how Alfredsson left. The best way to deal with that is to move on, guys. It happened. Alfredsson's not going to lose sleep over it. He's got 5.5 million reasons to move on. So you first need to name a captain. My picks would be Chris Phillips or Jason Spezza, and it looks like, from what the media reports say, that it's going to be Jason Spezza. And really, I would say Alfredsson, who? I mean, you've got Bobby Ryan, and to add to that, you've got another guy like Clark McCarthy. These guys are going to add offense to your team, and they're young. They're not an aging veteran who you have to worry about if they're going to retire or not. And they have, they still have a decent defense. Their strengths are going to be in goaltending. Craig Anderson, I think he's a good goalie. He's not going to be able to play the whole season, so Robin Lehner is going to have to share that responsibility. But their keys to success are going to be their top six forwards really producing consistently, and obviously Karlsson, Erik Karlsson, is going to have to lead them defensively, which shouldn't be a problem considering how he bounced back from his injury last year and played 20 plus minutes. So what I'm trying to say is Ottawa fans shouldn't worry, because they got guys like Bobby Ryan, Kyle Turris, Jason Spezza, Mika Zibanejad, Milan McCulloch, etc., and they've got lots of prospects to add to that, so they're going to be a good team. Maybe not this year, but in the future. And I just want to point out possibly some weaknesses for them, which may lead to them not making the playoffs. They have a lack of depth at the center position, and a lack of depth in their bottom six forwards, which most teams do, but it's evident with Ottawa. And even though they've got guys like Karlsson and Phillips on defense, they also have some young defensemen, and I think there's a lack of experience there now. As I just said, Robin Lehner is their backup goalie. I'm not doubting he's not a capable backup, but I think there's a big difference between being a top goalie in the AHL and moving on to the NHL. I think he may have to split the workload with Craig Anderson, and this could pose a problem. So overall, I see the distraction of losing Alfredsson and just maybe some lack of experience on their team contributing to the Senators possibly being a bubble team, but probably being on the outside of the playoff picture near the end of the regular season. Now, moving on to Winnipeg, I think the honeymoon for the Jets and their fans are over. Everyone has been excited the last couple of years, including myself, that the Jets are back. But they've had two very disappointing ends to their first two seasons. And it hasn't stopped this offseason, losing guys like Alex Vermeestrov and Nikolai Antropov. This won't help them in terms of where they're going to get their scoring from. Now, they do have some new additions. Devin Taniguchi and Michael Frolik have joined the Jets, and Setaguchi, he needs to be, if Jets are going to be successful with the guys that they've lost this offseason, Setaguchi really needs to prove that he belongs in the NHL, and he needs to play like a top 6 forward. Maybe show the player that he was in, or that we thought he was in San Jose. And I think the strengths for the Jets are Andre Pavlik could keep them in the playoff picture probably longer than they should be. They're in a really tough division, and I really don't see them making the playoffs. But Pavlik could be a reason why they would sneak into the playoffs. And their keys to being successful are obviously Evander Kane needs to be a superstar, and they need to score by committee. Guys like Setaguchi and Mark Scheifele. Scheifele, it's rumored that he'll probably make the team this season, and I would think that with the departures of Vermeerstraff and Andropov, that will be likely. Now, the one good thing about the Jets is they still have a solid defense. Guys like Tobias Henstrom and Zach Bogosian and Dustin Byfuglien, they've been there for a while, and they need to play well if the team's going to do well. But overall, I see the Jets having a general lack of consistency. They didn't have a lot of scoring last year, and they were inconsistent. They were up and down. They were at the top of their conference for a while last season, and it all fell apart near the end. If they do bad this season, I think Claude Noel needs to go. I don't like him, and I think he could be part of the problem on that team, but that's just my opinion. So I really, because of the division that they're in the conference, with teams like Detroit and Boston and just being in the East, I really don't see them making the playoffs. But they should be an exciting team to watch, as all the Canadian teams will be. Moving on to the Calgary Flames, they're a bit of a different story, and they're going to have probably a pretty miserable season. No Kipper, no Hinla, no Bouwmeester. Presents a pretty big problem, in my opinion. Your franchise cornerstones are gone, and they've been saying that they're in a rebuild for a while. I'm not a fan of Jay Feaster at all. So I think adding a guy like Brian Burke, he's a backup plan for if the Calgary management really doesn't, or it doesn't even matter if they don't like Jay Feaster. It's just if they get fed up with how Feaster is running the team, then Brian Burke can easily become the general manager as well as president of player operations. And their strengths are they have a lot of good prospects. TJ Brody, Sven Murchie, Michael Backlund, these are all going to be really good players someday. They probably need a little bit of time still, but the future is bright. Their weaknesses, they have way too many question marks in goal. Right now they have Kari Ramo and Joey McDonald. They're the front runners for goaltending. That's not a horrible situation, but you need a clear-cut number one. And I know Kari Ramo has been in the KHL, but the KHL isn't the NHL, so there's probably going to be an adjustment period for him, and that could hurt the team when they really need to be winning games. And I don't see Calgary in the playoff picture at all. Now, moving on to Calgary's Alberta rivals, the Edmonton Oilers. You know, for the last 3 seasons, they've had this show on TV called The Oil Change. I've enjoyed watching it. I'm a fan of just hockey in general. I do have teams that I like more than others, but I like the Edmonton Oilers. However, I do think the oil change needs to be over, and they need to start winning games and competing for a playoff spot. They've got some new additions, most notably Richard Bachman, a goalie from Dallas who could easily compete for the #1 job. I think Devin Dubnyk and Jason LaBarbera have had enough chances, and Bachman could very well steal the #1 job and be a solid #1. I think I've watched him play in Dallas behind Kari Lehtonen, and it shows that he's ready to be a #1 goalie. Now, the strengths of the Oilers, obviously their offense, they got a lot of young guns. The most recent news is Taylor Hall is going to be playing center while Ryan Nugent-Hopkins recovers from an injury. The media is going to make more out of that than there needs to be. Taylor Hall is an awesome player. He's going to do fine. They've got a good offense. They're adding, I forgot to say that they also added Andrew Ferentz. It's going to really give them some solid leadership on D. They lost Ryan Whitney in the offseason, I do believe, so Andrew Ferentz will fit in nicely. He's got playoff experience, and he'll be a leader. Their weaknesses, just like the story's been the last 3 seasons, can they keep up their play defensively? Can they hold a lead? Can they hold teams off from coming back and stealing games that the Oilers should probably win? Time will only tell. Other people would call that consistency. Can they be consistent enough to play for or to be a playoff team? You know, I see them as being a bubble team near the end of the regular season, and you know, it's unclear right now whether they're going to make the playoffs, but they definitely have the team to do so if they play well enough. And finally, I know this is a long video, guys, but the last team, the Vancouver Canucks. Okay, so biggest storyline there is Roberto Luongo. Okay, I think, you know, he's going to be the #1 goalie. The media is going to be all over it the whole season. They're going to be trying to make stories out of stuff that shouldn't be stories. You know, you should talk about it now before the season starts, and then you know, find something else to talk about. But it's the media, and they won't. But Luongo, you know, I wish he would just shut up and play hockey. You know, finally the #1 again. There's not going to be any issues with Corey Snyder being there. He needs to prove that he deserves to be in that #1 spot. Now, the most notable new addition to the Canucks is the hiring of John Tortorella. And I know, you know, there's a love-hate relationship around the league with Tortorella and the way he coaches and the way he deals with the media, but I love him because I see the questions that they ask Tortorella, and I would react the same way. So, you know, I share his, you know, no-nonsense attitude towards answering stupid questions with the media, and I love the way I watched NHL 24/7 when the Rangers were in the Winter Classic, and I love the way he deals with the team. I think he's really going to light a fire under the Sedins, and hopefully the Canucks won't have a similar issue to what happened with Marian Gaborik last season in New York. Now, moving on to the keys for Vancouver to be successful. Obviously, the Sedins need to lead the way and carry and that it's not just the Sedins, it's their entire top six forwards need to play well and be consistent. Their strength is obviously their offense. They have a lot of it, and their defense is probably one of the best in the league with guys like Kevin Bieksa, Dan Hughes, Christian Ehrhoff. You know, the list goes on and on. And their weaknesses, now, this could also be one of their strengths, but considering that it's probably going to be the biggest storyline throughout the year, is Roberto Luongo. And, you know, is he going to be consistent, and who's going to back him up? They really haven't talked much about that. They've talked a lot about Luongo, and, you know, made a big story of it, but they've never said who is going to be the backup goalie. And as is usually the storyline with the Canucks or any good team that has underachieved in the playoffs, is consistency. Can they be consistent? Can they stay healthy? If they are consistent and Roberto plays well, then there should be no question that not only should they compete in the West, but they could be a President's Trophy candidate as well. So finally, that's all I have. Apologize about the long video, but I wanted to do this preseason preview because I'm going to do all 30 teams. So I wanted to get the Canadian teams out of the way first. So as always, if you like this, tell me about it. Slap that like button. Feel free to comment. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.